Welcome to the Football Haven podcast. My name is Tony Stewart, and for our first guest today, we have got Andy from #United. Good evening, Andy.
Hi, how you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Yourself?
Yeah, all right. All things considered, all good.
That sounds good to me. So, this is the podcast where we'll be talking about footballers in the Premier League and a bit of non-league, etc., etc. So, what I thought we could do first of all would be discussing what teams in the Premier League, so the whole 20 teams, and what positions they particularly need. And who would you want to sign for the other teams, I guess, if that's all right with you?
Yeah, let's delve straight into it. Let's go.
So shall we go alphabetical order?
Alphabetical order, yes, go for it.
So obviously Arsenal's first. I personally feel, as an Arsenal fan, we need a creative midfielder.
You've got one sitting on £300,000 a week who doesn't play for the club for some reason.
Well, Mesut Ozil.
That's the one.
Yeah, I loved him in the first 3 years, and then as soon as he signed that contract extension, it seems like it was a waste of time in a way. I'm not sure what you would think as a non-Arsenal fan.
It's a really strange one for me. I don't know why he was frozen out in the first place. Like I say, it's a position that potentially they could do with. They've got, what was it? Last transfer window they brought in Willian, who potentially could have added a bit of creative spark. He hasn't really done a lot. He kind of started very well and then dipped off from there. So why wouldn't you have a World Cup winning German international who has proven it for every club that he's played for in and around the first team squad? I don't understand it, unless it is something to do with money, unless it is something to do with something that has happened behind the scenes that we're not fully aware of. I don't know why you wouldn't have Mesut Ozil in the squad at least.
I personally, as an Arsenal fan, would probably say because he has got the tendency to be a bit lazy, maybe while playing. He has the odd pass, or assist, should I say, but he, in my opinion, doesn't run enough. But I guess
is that a player issue, or is that a team setup issue? Because surely if you've got someone of that talent, okay, might not have played for the last year and a half of it, you accommodate them somewhere within the team. Even the likes of Jose Mourinho, when he was at Chelsea, would accommodate someone like Joe Cole. You would get those players in and around the team, the squad, and play them to their strengths. Now, there might be certain games where you might not play them because that's the game against, I don't know, Burnley. Arsenal have struggled somewhat away at Turf Moor because of the more physical nature, put that in inverted commas, and the stuff that this is Arsene Wenger time that you talk about. But is that the kind of game that you might not play him in, and you might play him in a game where you're more likely to have 90% of possession at home, where you can create something, you need someone to unlock something? There are games for players, there are players for games. You've got to work that as a management team accordingly. I personally, I think should be in and around the team. I don't know why he's not.
So if you were Mikel Arteta, who do you want to sign for Arsenal
then? You've seen from a goalkeeping perspective that Martinez has gone off to Villa and has been doing incredibly well at Villa. So again, I'm not quite sure what the reasons behind letting him go, unless it was just purely for him to get first team football and he wanted to move away because he's got faith in Leno. How good Renato is as a backup goalkeeper is to be determined. Not sure. Is Leno good enough in order to be for a Champions League winning team? Potentially. I still think there's question marks about how solid they are at the back, and they've been crying out for a centre half, I think, for a few years now. So I'd still look at that as being a bit of a problem position for Arsenal, and I'd want someone to really take hold of that back three, back four, whatever's being played of. So I'd still, obviously, Tierney is a left back, left wing back. Maitland-Niles was also playing in there. Hector Bellerin on the other side. They seem strong in those wide positions. It's just that central defence that I question.
Yeah, so I totally agree. Shall we move on to Aston Villa?
Go for it.
In my opinion, they've been superb under someone that we would not expect to do as well as that would. They've bought a new striker, obviously, in Ollie Watkins, but personally, I don't see enough depth in the attacking role for Aston Villa. Not sure what you think.
I think you always see that. Well, I say you generally see that with teams that have been promoted from the Championship, is that they might have players who are more than capable at Premier League level. Let's say Jack Grealish is obviously having a fantastic season there, but what happens if Jack Grealish gets injured? And that can be replicated across a number of different teams in the Premier League. Strength in depth, especially at that kind of mid to low level, is always questioned. And do they have not only strength in depth, but it's the quality of that depth? And if as soon as you get one or two of the main players unavailable for any particular reason, which we've seen, COVID at the moment, and Villa struggling in that instance as well. Players are self-isolate and not being available for selection. And again, this can be replicated across a number of different teams, but have they got the strength and depth across the whole squad in order to be able to have a couple of absentees and still do well? It would be a struggle for them if they do. Like you say, they've absolutely overachieved so far compared to expectations. I definitely didn't think they'd be in a position that they are currently.
Yeah. Do you think they can make Europa League?
Oh, I mean, it's a bit of it. Could they make Europa League? You never know. I mean, Sheffield United were on the cusp of the Europa League last year, weren't they? And then they've suffered a second season syndrome. Would they want to be in the Europa League? Most probably not. When we're talking about strength and depth and the additional number of games, you saw that with Burnley a few years ago, and they managed to get there, and then they had a struggle the season after. So I don't think they'd actually want to be this season.
Yeah, that sounds logical.
Which is a bit of an odd position to take, because most teams would absolutely snap your hand off to get into Europe.
Yeah. Oh, well. Next up is Brighton. Personally, I think they need a new midfielder, or a midfielder maybe to help out. Like, not a creative midfielder, but maybe because they have got obviously three, I would say, good forwards in Danny Welbeck, Solly March, and I think it's Neil Mopé. But personally, I think they need a new midfielder.
I haven't seen enough of Adam Lallana this year at Brighton.
I was expecting more from him.
Well, I think he's been injured for quite a while, I think. He's a player I've really liked at Liverpool. He always looks incredibly tidy. He always looks he always looks like one of those players. Maybe he flatters to deceive a little bit in terms of, an output stats-wise. Does he get the amount of goals and assists that you'd want from there? Not quite sure. But I've always watched him play and always been impressed by the way that he plays the game. Very easy on the eye. So I'd like to see him get fit and get games.
The one player I would say that's really stood out for Brighton is probably Ben White, as he was on loan at Leeds, wasn't he, last season? How he's helped solidify them a bit defensively.
Can't really comment about that. Don't really know too much about Ben White, to be honest with you. I mean, Tariq Lamptey is one of the players who's been getting the headlines, hasn't he, for Brighton? Is that kind of right wing back, but wants to attack more than defend. I mean, Dan Burn, looking at the defence, took an absolute roasting, didn't he, last game? I mean, again, Graham Potter as a manager is again someone who's working with, don't want to say limited resources in Brighton, because I think that's doing them a bit of a disservice. But again, he seems like a progressive manager, someone who, I don't know, for some reason, a Southampton manager comes to mind. I don't know why. It kind of seems like he'd be that kind of person who would go to a club that you don't expect too much of, does a good job, gets them playing some really nice football, and then moves on to, I don't know, maybe a Tottenham in a couple of years' time.
I can see it personally. Moving on, we've got Burnley. In my opinion, they need a right-hand side midfielder. According to these stats, they've played 3 different right wingers this season alone. I think that's a bit of alarm bells.
Who have they been?
Robbie Brady, Bird Goodmanson, and Dwight McNeil.
Dwight McNeil was someone who kind of not necessarily burst onto the scene, but definitely had something about him. Was it last season? Potentially even season before. And yeah, I haven't seen too much of him. I mean, looking at the table, they're struggling at the moment for goals. Really, they've only scored 9 so far in their 15 games, which kind of, again, you're saying ringing alarm bells. And at the same time, haven't been the solid team that you kind of associate with a Sean Dyche team. They've conceded 20 in those 15. And I always, from a fancy Premier League team, always used to fancy a Burnley centre-half in there, because you know you'd get clean sheets, and you know they'd potentially pop up at the set piece the other end. So someone like a Ben Mee, who was always a kind of a Ben Mee or James Tarkowski would always be someone who I'd try to get into my fancy dream team, and they're not in there this year. So I think that speaks volumes.
Yeah.
So yeah, not quite sure what's gone on with Burnley this year. One thing from a goalkeeping perspective is Nick Pope in the England team. There's always questions whether or not he should be starting for England. He's been a definite positive for Burnley over the last few seasons.
Do you think he should start for England?
Don't know. I'm going to completely sit on the fence with this.
Ooh.
And I'd say England's always going to be supposedly the pinnacle of football. There's always questions marks about the quality of it. Is it as good as Champions League? But you want your England team ideally playing at the highest standard that they can do for their clubs. Like, say, Burnley aren't one of those teams. Like, you want your players playing in high pressure environments, in high pressure games, to try and replicate that on an international stage. So Nick Pope most probably needs, although he's a very capable goalkeeper, most probably needs to move to what would be, in inverted commas, a bigger club who are pushing for top 4, top 6, cups, Champions League, those sort of games.
Definitely. Next up is Chelsea. They've surprised, I would be honest, spending £200 million in the summer. They bought, obviously, Thiago Silva on a free transfer. Personally, I think they need another centre-half, maybe to provide competition for them, both him and Zuma.
Christensen was a player who always seemed to have a lot of potential. And then Tamori, from a young player perspective, is someone who was always highly rated as well. So it looks like they've got a couple of centre-halves there for a couple of years' time, but whether or not they've got one for the here and now, not quite sure. I mean, they've been playing 3 at the back on occasions as well with Azpilicueta. I can't say that. So let's call him Cesar to make it nice and easy for me, but he's been kind of filling in as one of those wide centre-halves from there. So, yeah, potentially. I mean, like you say, it's one of those things that Frank Lampard had the team last year when they couldn't sign anyone. And by all accounts, did a good job. Now he's spent a lot of money. There's question marks about how well Chelsea are performing. But all those players that he's brought in have got to take time to settle in and to bond and to all that. It's not the kind of thing that happens overnight. So, a lot of money spent on Timo Werner. Scored a lot of goals in Germany. Hasn't really set the world of light since he's been there. He's not being played as a central striker the majority of the time. So hopefully you'd expect more to come from him. Same with Kai Havertz. Again, Christian Pulisic, who doesn't seem to be playing as much this year as potentially his potential from last year showed that he should do. So it seems to be an odd team that he's building together that you kind of expect to be up and around there. That they don't. Yeah, I mean they're in 7th at the moment. 9th in the league, having won 7 out of 17. So it's kind of things you're expecting more, but I'm not quite sure where to come from because they do seem to be quite a young team.
Do you think Roman Abramovich will sack him at the end of the season?
He's got history, hasn't he? As an owner, as changing manager every 2 to 3 years. Normally it's come in, win a few trophies and then move on. Whether or not Frank Lampard having a season of not being able to sign anyone as a bedding in season, then has got an additional season in him because he's Frank Lampard and they want him to do well being a Chelsea legend. Might keep him in his position for another year or so without the pressure that you'd expect on a Chelsea manager, and then maybe it will be the year after that things will happen and actually things will click for him.
Hopefully. Next up is Crystal Palace. Another centre-half I personally think they need. They've been playing Cheku Kouyaté out of position, in my opinion, from the defensive midfielder to a centre-back. And he has bought, obviously, the likes of Scott Dan, Gary Cahill, Mamadou Sakho and James Tompkins in his time there. I don't think they're working out as much, and age isn't on their side. What do you think?
I thought Sakho was a really good guy from Liverpool. Like you say, I mean, Joel Ward, James Tompkins, Scott Dan, Gary Cahill. Again, I mean, Palace are kind of in that position that 14th as we're speaking at the moment in the league, and I'd kind of expect them to finish 14th.
Yeah.
So they're doing what they're needing. I mean, no idea what the chairman and Roy Hodgson, what their aims and aspirations are for the season, but you kind of think they're doing what you'd expect them to do. I mean, they rely heavily on Wilfried Zaha for any kind of creative spark, and a lot of goals coming from him. Whether or not you were kind of expecting more of Batshuayi, Christian Benteke, Jordan Ayew in order to score goals. I mean, I've just picked up their squad list at the moment, and Batshuayi, no goals in 10, Benteke 3 in 12, Jordan Ayew 1 in 13, and then Zaha's up there with 8 in 15. They seem to be that kind of Roy Hodgson team of being solid, and then won't set the world alight up front. I wouldn't really want to be a Crystal Palace supporter, to be honest. Looking at that, I'd want them to have a little bit more attacking flair for them. And like I say, when you're talking about the age of the defensive unit, Andros Townsend was always someone who had a bit of a spark. I'm not sure how old he is now, but he can't be a spring chicken anymore. They've got Eze that they've bought, I think, from QPR, wasn't it, who seems to have potential about it. Maybe he needs to play a bit more as well. But I mean, a lot was thought of Christian Benteke when he moved there after his spells at Liverpool and Villa. Well, Villa especially, and scored lots of goals there. I'd want them to score more goals, be more of an attacking threat.
Andros Townsend is 29, apparently.
No way.
Yeah, 29.
Don't believe you. I thought he was at least in his 30s.
Well, he is 29. Crazy. But still.
29 until he's 30, right?
Yeah, 91 he was born. So he'll turn 30 this year.
Yeah. I'm really surprised at that, actually. He seems to be around for a long time.
He's been around forever, but at the same time, it's crazy.
Yeah. Wow. Sorry, Andros.
Hopefully you're listening. Next up is Everton. In my opinion, I think they made one big mistake in the window, and that was having only Dominic Calvert-Lewin as a striker. Personally, I think they should have kept Moise Kean and maybe used him as a backup striker instead of relying on, I think his name's Anthony Gordon. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, they've still got Cenk Tosun there. And, I mean, whether or not Richarlison or someone like Yannick Bolasie, of course, James Rodriguez, whether or not they could play as central strikers and play slightly different to the way they play with Dominic Calvert-Lewin, is a potential. I mean, they seem to have a lot of attacking players there as well. Bernard, and also I love Gylfi Sigurdsson.
Yes,
kind of my ideal player. They do seem to have a number of players there. Obviously, they've got a very experienced manager who would know about balancing squads and things. So, I'd have full faith in that, in Carlo Ancelotti and what he's doing.
Do you think they'll get into Europe?
I'd quite fancy Everton getting into Europe. I'd quite like to see them there.
Yeah, it would be good to see how Ancelotti can deal with, as he's been PSG, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, Chelsea manager. Never won it with Chelsea, surprisingly.
Yeah,
bad manager.
I mean, in terms of their squad makeup, they seem to be the type of squad which, on paper anyway, looks to be solid all round. There's not a kind of, from my eyes anyway, I mean, I don't follow Everton week in, week out. I don't watch them. It's not like I'm a season ticket holder who sits at Goodison Park watching every game. But it does look like from their squad list that they are a very solid team that have a lot of good players within it. So whether or not they need someone else in there who can, again, add that little bit of spark. They've obviously had Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who's been an absolute revelation this year in the amount of goals that he scored, which kind of came from nowhere, really. It was only since Ancelotti took over that kind of he got given the role and started scoring goals, which previously it didn't seem like they had someone who would regularly put the ball in the net. So obviously that's been a really good, I'm going to say not necessarily a find, but it's obviously something that Ancelotti has seen alongside Duncan Ferguson and put him in there, which is fantastic. I'd love to see them step up and step on. So maybe that first step of European football coming to Goodison Park would be a really good sign, and maybe there could be a force of Merseyside with them and Liverpool.
Yeah,
that top 6, top 4 pushing. I'd love to see it.
It would be good. Next up is Fulham. I was expecting more from Fulham, I'll be honest, with Scott Parker taking over, former Fulham player. But apparently Mitrovic has only scored 2 goals, both in the same game, and one was a penalty from 34 shots.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's a good stat. Where did you get that stat from?
Football365.com.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think they are crying out for a striker.
Yeah, I mean they've got a couple of games in hand, but yeah, they're struggling, aren't they? Which you'd expect really from teams coming up. There seems to be quite a gulf unless you've got the right recruitment policy between the Championship and the Premier League. I mean, you need to score goals and you need to keep clean sheets. And it's either got to be one or the other, really, when you first come up, if not obviously both. And they seem to be unable to do both. I can't see anything but relegation actually for Fulham this year.
Back down, they're turning into a yo-yo club, I feel.
Do you think so?
Next.
I mean, they invested heavily, didn't they, 2 seasons ago in order to try and stay up in the Premier League. Didn't manage to keep a lot of the team together, the likes of Mitrovic, like you're talking about, and also added to that with Cavalerio, is that how you pronounce that, the ex-Wolf player, and some others in the Championship and got promoted again. So do you think they're going to be, I know West Brom are also in this position of, they're always a yo-yo club between Premier League, slightly different type of philosophy, I think, with West Brom and the way that they play. But yeah, Fulham and West Brom doing the rounds of coming up and down and up and down. Maybe you're right.
Next up is Leeds United. They were very heavily linked with a guy from Udinese, Rodrigo de Paul. That never happened, but apparently interest is rekindled. I personally feel like they do need, like, maybe a creative midfielder-ish.
I mean, again, it's another one of those that is in the same sort of vein of Everton and Carlo Ancelotti. Is that they've clearly got the right man at the helm who's got the team playing in a way in order for them to be successful. I mean, who would have thought that Leeds would be in the position that they are, currently playing some of the football they are. They remind me a little bit of Sheffield United last year, so hopefully it's not a one-season wonder for Leeds. And again, we're talking about Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Patrick Bamford is most probably, and again, similar sort of there was lots of question marks about Bamford and whether or not he'd be able to score goals at a Premier League level. And he is a dream team manager. I mentioned this twice now, not a dream team, and he's not in mine, but he's a dream team manager's gold miner because he's cheap and he scores a lot of points. But I mean, I'll be Dan Brown from #is Leeds fan, and he's very happy with the way the Leeds are performing. I think I would be as well if I was a Leeds fan. It seems to be getting plaudits all over the place, don't they, in terms of the way they're playing, which is, again, similar to Sheffield United last year. Hopefully the similarities don't stay the same.
Yeah. Next up is Leicester. They apparently played 7 different central defensive combinations this season, because Sionchu and Ndidi being long-term injuries. I was very pleased that they signed that Wesley Fofana, slightly on the expensive side, but looks to be a real top talent. But I feel they need someone else like that young and up and coming, personally.
I mean, I think Leicester's main problem is going to be Jamie Vardy's now 34, I think. I might need to check that again, since I thought Andros Townsend was a little bit older than he is. But there's going to become a time where Jamie Vardy, although he's retired from international football, he's not going to be the player that he was. He relies heavily on his pace and his physical attributes. I mean, he's obviously finishing is unbelievable, but he scores a lot of goals, and he scores a lot of goals for the team in comparison to the rest of the team. So there's going to be an issue when he's either unavailable or he isn't the player that he was previously. Now, whether or not, Iniacho plays in his place, whether or not Perez could take up the mantle, I'm really not sure. So I think they're going to need someone in order to be that second striker, or to try and push Jamie Vardy, or to try and take his place.
Just looking to see how old Jamie Vardy is, and you are correct. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, on Twitter the other day, it was his birthday, you see. Remembered that.
Yeah, it was his birthday today, I think.
Oh, is it today, is it?
If you're listening, Jamie Vardy, happy birthday.
Yeah.
You are 5 years older, unfortunately, than Andros Townsend.
Oh,
well.
Yeah, I mean, Leicester, again, the likes of Praet, Harvey Barnes, James Maddison, Yuri Tillemans, they've got a really solid midfield there. So you said they needed a centre half, didn't you? I think Sonchu, is that how you pronounce his name?
I don't know. Sionchu.
Yeah, I think he's back from injury as well. He'll be a big plus for the back line there. I mean, just plaudits quickly for Kasper Schmeichel, the way that he's been playing for the last 2, 3, 4 years. Absolutely such a consistent goalkeeper at the top level.
Would you say he's as good as his dad, or nearly at that level?
Oh, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because, from the outset, you're going to say no, just simply because the older Schmeichel won everything there was going for Man United, won the Euros with Denmark. So is he as good as him? He's a very, very capable goalkeeper, top class, but because of the nature of his dad, because of the trophies that he won, it's difficult. I mean, now, yes, he's better than his dad, but his dad's most probably, late 50s.
This is when he's 60s or something, though, yeah?
Yeah, maybe. But if you get prime Peter versus prime Kasper, that would be one hell of a game of goalie wars.
But wouldn't it be 0-0, probably, because of how good they are?
Maybe.
Next up is Liverpool. They've been, in my opinion, extremely unlucky with injuries. But I think they'll need another centre-back.
There's a lot of teams that you say need centre-backs, don't you? There's only a certain amount of centre-backs to go around.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, how long's Virgil van Dijk out for?
I heard he was out for the rest of the season, but apparently he's training again, but sterilely quick. Like, he did his ACL, I believe.
He's always going to be a massive loss, isn't he, that he's going, whether or not they've got the strength and depth to cover for that long term. I mean, Joel Matip seems to have been doing pretty well. Joe Gomez is always someone, again, that whenever he's played for England and I've watched him, he's someone that I've liked and admired and would have him in my team. Outside of that, there seems to be cases where Fabinho drops in, doesn't he, and covers from a centre-half perspective. And it's that kind of, Man City were doing it a lot, weren't they? And Pep used to do a lot of getting a centre midfielder to drop into centre-half, especially when you're going to control the ball a lot, whereas you're not going to be found out from a defensive perspective. It's those issues when you're on turnovers, transitions, and when other teams are going to have the same amount or a bit more of the ball than lesser teams. I mean, what players do Liverpool need? They're top of the league, joint top. So with Man United, as Gary Neville says, Man United can go top. But I mean, they're still to me they're the team to beat in this league. They're just so strong up front. Salah, Mane, Firmino, and Jota coming in as well. I mean, I'm a Wolves fan, and Jota going from Wolves to Liverpool, I don't think too many Wolves fans would have thought he'd have the start to his Liverpool career that he has. It's been phenomenal. So Wolves can pick them, and Liverpool can buy them off us.
Yeah. Next club is Manchester City. In my opinion, as Sergio Aguero is currently not going to be signing on as things stand, I personally think they need a striker like an Erling Haaland.
Well, they've definitely got the money to go out and buy it. Buy him if that's what they want.
But according to this, it's been 4 years since Man City bought a last striker for actual money.
For actual money? What have they been using
instead of using their academy.
Okay.
So 4 years is a while for buying a striker, and that was Gabriel Jesus. So,
I mean, Gabriel Jesus isn't necessarily a bad substitute for Sergio Aguero, but a prime Sergio Aguero scores so many goals. Is Ferran Torres a good enough replacement?
I think he's a good winger, but I wouldn't see him as a striker.
No.
In my opinion.
Yeah, maybe you're right. I mean, Sergio Aguero he hasn't played too much this season because of injury anyway. If you had a team with Sergio Aguero in it and a team without Sergio Aguero without him in it, the team without are going to be struggling in comparison to the team with, aren't they? I mean, he's that good a player. Do they need a centre forward? Yeah, I think you're most probably right.
Do you think they'll get Messi?
Oh, dude, it's Messi. Could Messi do it on a wet and windy Tuesday night in Stoke, as the saying goes? Of course he could. I mean, what a phenomenal player. I'd love to see Messi in the Premier League. Absolutely love it. Most probably would have loved it a bit more if it was 2, 3, 4 years ago.
Yes.
But even still, I mean, what I wouldn't want, although it's completely different, but you see that Gareth Bale at Spurs now, is that he's a bit part player, really, unfortunately, because of the injuries that he's had and the condition that he's in. You want to see them at their prime, don't they? Yeah. Playing in there, but still, Messi in the Premier League would put bums on seats, definitely. Well, not in current climate, but you know what I mean. Definitely, I'd watch Man City games purely to watch Lionel Messi, so I'd absolutely love to see him in the Premier League.
Yeah. The next team is obviously Manchester United. Personally, I think they need a defensive midfielder. Possibly as Pogba could be leaving, and as crazy as I'm just reading now, I would say Nemanja Matic has still got his uses, but apparently in July he signed a 3-year extension at the age of 32. Like, Arsenal fans are being slated for Willian signing a 3-year deal, but is Nemanja Matic worth the 3-year deal?
That sounds to me like it's very unlike Man United. Nemanja Matic, to me, comes across as a very Jose Mourinho type player. Whether or not, I mean, he's got his uses, obviously, and it sounds very derogatory to Nemanja Matic saying you've got your use from there. But does he fit in? Does he play so much under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and the type of football that he's trying to play versus the type of football that Jose Mourinho was trying to play when he was signed? I don't think he does. I'd like to know what's going on Man United with Van der Beek.
Yeah, he was a surprise one. I've heard he's unhappy. Some sources are saying he's unhappy and he is wanting to go on loan, maybe, which I think would be stupid in my opinion. But the only club that want to have him back, and that's Ajax.
Yeah, I mean, he came across with a bit of high expectations, and then just hasn't played. I mean, what surprise? It doesn't. Does it surprise me or not? But Cavani being brought in is obviously a short-term stopgap, as Igalo was as well. I mean, Igalo's still there. Cavani's playing, but Cavani, he's not going to be around for very long. And then if you're looking at their forward line on top of that, then Marcus Rashford is obviously a phenomenal player and he's got a lot to offer. Mason Greenwood, when he came onto the scene, there was a lot of thought about him and Martial. Does that necessarily need adding to in the long term? I think most probably. I've got no idea about how good someone like Darlow is and Chong on there as well. So do they need a centre forward? I mean, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's come under a lot of criticism, hasn't he, in terms of how well Man United are playing. But yet, if they win, then they're going top of the league. I don't know if that's saying that's the strength of Man United, which doesn't seem to be, versus Liverpool, like you say, have had a lot of injuries, and Man City, who form doesn't seem to be at where you'd expect Man City's form to be. But yeah, definitely a very interesting season for Man United. I mean, there were things that I've read about Man United. They're trying to offload a number of players. I mean, Phil Jones has been there for a long time and hasn't necessarily played. Same with Marcos Rojo. Paul Pogba. There's always question marks about Paul Pogba.
Yeah.
Juan Mata isn't as young as he was. So yeah, I don't know if they need to sell some of those guys in order to free up some wage bill, potentially get some money in order to buy someone. Don't know, but yeah, definitely an interesting season for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Man United.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. Who's your favourite out of the three? Saka, Greenwood, Foden.
Saka, Foden. I think. Any particular reason? No, I mean, I'm kind of my ideal footballers. I don't know, if I was a manager, I'd most probably be like an Arsene Wenger type manager and have all these footballers who play really nice, pretty football, and I'll have 11 of those players on the pitch to play really nice, pretty football. And Phil Foden, I think, fits in with that more than the others. I don't think I'd be very successful in that. I'd have a team that would control the middle of the pitch and not necessarily do stuff very well at the back and at the front, but I'd play some damn good football, and Phil Foden would be in there.
Like Guardiola is your assistant, maybe?
Yeah, I think. I mean, if he's available, then yeah, I'll take him.
Fair enough. Moving on, Newcastle United. In my opinion, they need a right back. They've apparently played 4 different right backs this season in Javier Manquillo, Jacob Murphy, Emil Kraft, and DeAndre Edlin. Maybe they need one out-and-out right back just to give a bit of competition to them and maybe solidify first-team place.
Yeah, if they've got 4 already or they've played 4, why do they need another one?
Well, no, I just think they need to get a solid choice or potentially even a new manager, in my opinion. I don't mind Brucey, but like they're linked with Brandon Williams from Man United on loan to have cover on the left. But could he actually fulfill in right back and maybe solidify that spot?
I don't know is the answer to that. I mean, to me, Newcastle just screams to me of having all these players that don't seem to be played to their potential. I mean, Callum Wilson had a couple of seasons at Bournemouth when he got into the England squad and scored goals, and now he just seems to be living off scraps, although he's got 18-14 and he's doing all right. I don't know how many of those are penalties. I mean, Alan Saint-Maximin just seems to be someone who has loads of potential and isn't doing what you kind of. I don't know if it's because of the role that he's playing at the club, or whether or not in the team, I should say, or whether or not he's not hitting the heights that you'd expect. Ryan Fraser again at Bournemouth, such an exciting player to watch on the wing. I was in the States and I watched Almiron a couple of times. I watched him once in the flesh and used to watch a bit of the MLS stuff, and he was amazing. He was superb. I mean, yeah, there's a quality difference between the MLS and Premier League, but he was definitely one of those players that you'd think would do well. But again, just doesn't seem to be played in a position that gets the best out of him. So, I mean, when you think of Newcastle, you think of Newcastle under Kevin Keegan, don't you? And that kind of football.
Yeah.
And this team just does not scream of that to me at all. I'd love to see them. I don't know if there's a bit of a theme with me with a few things that I've said, but you know what, a Jose Mourinho team, that's a bit of a disservice to Jose Mourinho, but you know, like a Steve Bruce team, a West Brom, Sam Allardyce team, they're just doing nothing for me.
Yeah. Well, one of your best mates in Rich Beck is a Newcastle fan. I wonder who he wants to sign for them.
Yeah, follow Rich Beck on Twitter and he'll often moan about Newcastle performances. Same with Jimmy Conrad as well. He's a Newcastle fan. I don't know how he's a Newcastle fan, but he is. Yeah, and you'll often see conversations of those two just moaning about the game and what's going on and how bad Newcastle are playing.
Yeah. Moving on to Sheffield United, I honestly feel like they need a creative midfielder, not a centre back this time. Like they haven't won all season. They, in my opinion, they play with a 3-5-2, but their 5 is incredibly defensive, as if they're trying to stay up.
I mean, last year, someone like Lundstrom scored a lot of goals. Hasn't contributed this year. There was a lot of talk about Sander Berg and how good he would be, or was and would be. So they playing away of overlapping centre backs, wasn't it? And kind of fill in positions and go play. And not quite sure what's happened to Sheffield United this year. See, the loss of Dean Henderson was. He was phenomenal last year for Sheffield United, but then again, they replaced him with Aaron Ramsdale, who's a more than capable goalkeeper, as saw with Bournemouth. I suppose for me personally, you don't want to be relegated with Bournemouth and then relegated with Sheffield United. Same, the next season. I think they overachieved last year, and maybe teams have found a way to play against them. Against someone like Ryan Brewster, was bought from Liverpool as a centre forward in order to try and be that focal point and score some goals, and he hasn't been able to. So yeah, I'd love to see them play the football that they were playing last year, but it just doesn't seem to be happening this year for Sheffield United. And if they don't get out of the rut soon, if they don't start picking up points here and there and start building on stuff, there's only one way that they're going.
Do you think Chris Wilder will be sacked?
Personally, I think the turnaround period for managers is too quick anyway. I mean, if you're judged on a here and now basis, where how can you sack someone for having one bad season, but has built the club for however long, and you've done such a good job over a number of seasons. I don't think that would happen in many other professions. But there's obviously a big financial loss to going from Premier League to Championship. So it all depends on the club ethos. I can't, from a Sheffield United perspective, I don't think they would, but you never know, do you? I mean, I didn't think West Brom would get rid of Slaven Bilic, but they have. So yeah, well, I don't think they should. I mean, they've got a lot of players there. They've obviously added to them when they've got up into the Premier League with a couple of players that we've just mentioned, and some others as well, like Ampadu and Oliver Burke, and players who are good footballers. They're an improvement on what they had previously. I just don't know why they're not performing to some level compared to last year. So I think, you know, if this was the team that would go down, we're talking about yo-yo teams. This is exactly the type of team that I'd lump some money on them coming straight back up, because it looks like they've still got a good core of players who would do well in the Championship, who are obviously versatile and good enough to play in the Premier League.
Sounds good to me. Next up is Southampton. Where do you start with Southampton? Like, they're doing phenomenal. Like,
yeah, aren't they just?
Like, I'm thinking fullback, but at the same time, Carl Walker-Peters has done well. Ryan Bertrand's done okay when he's been called for, but maybe a younger presence could be good.
Big reliance again for goals on Danny Ings. There are some others. I mean, Jay Adams has been being bought from Birmingham. It's really difficult one, because obviously you want Danny Ings to be fit and to play and be the player that he threatened to be at Liverpool and others, and he's obviously been doing really well at Southampton. He's got to be robust enough in order to play as many games as possible, because there's going to be a big weight on his shoulders in order to deliver the goals that Southampton need in order to be successful. I've always really liked Nathan Redmond as a player, but when he was at Norwich and now at Southampton, he always seems to be a player who is capable of doing things. But again, when you're talking about fantasy football league stats of goals and assists, always seems to be lacking and whatnot. I mean, they've got James Ward-Prowse, who's been playing phenomenally and has been that goal-scoring midfielder, phenomenal free kick taker. Do they need someone else in that centre midfield in order to support James Ward-Prowse and what he's doing? I'm not sure.
Well, they did lose Højbjerg.
Who's doing very well for Tottenham by what I read on Twitter anyway.
Yeah. The next team is obviously now Tottenham. As an Arsenal fan, don't know what to say. Probably tell the whole team is just sell the club and just disband, but fortunately we have to talk about them. I would personally focus on outgoings.
You would hate that.
What, Tottenham?
You would hate that. There'd be no rivalry.
We could have Chelsea.
Sorry, say that again?
I would say outgoing.
Oh, true.
Focus on the outgoing.
Well, you don't think they're going to add?
I don't think they'll add. It's like I was reading, Danny Rose is not been registered. Paulo Gazzaniga, who did phenomenal in my opinion when Lloris got injured last season, and he's not even registered. They've got apparently 7 players that Mourinho, including Dele Alli, who doesn't see a future in. So
I don't understand that with Dele Alli.
It was weird. It's just, I don't know why, but it's bringing me flashbacks to Pogba with him in Man United. Like, he focuses on one attacking midfielder or someone he doesn't get on with straight away, and then they have arguments.
Yeah, and again, I don't understand that about Danny Rose either. I mean, Danny Rose has been a really good professional where he's played. So, I mean, they do have a couple of left backs who may be in front of him, but I'm not sure why you wouldn't register him. But yeah, I'm not sure with Spurs. They always seem, again, I mean, we talked about reliance on players in Southampton. We were just talking about reliance on Danny Ings. They spread things out a little bit more, don't they, in Tottenham? I mean, Son Heung-min has been phenomenal, scored goals. Harry Kane scored goals, and those two seem to be linking up incredibly well this year, which is great for me, because going back to fantasy football, I do have both of them in my team. So maybe there's an over-reliance on me and Tottenham scoring goals. Again, I mean, we spoke about Messi and And I'd love to see Gareth Bale get up to some sort of form that so flashes of what he was like at Spurs previously.
Well, he's on the season on loan, isn't he?
Is he on loan or have they purchased him? I'm not sure.
I can't remember, but I think he's on loan, and they were saying it's an option to buy 55 million, which I think is a bit steep.
It sounds like it to me. But again, who are we to talk? I don't have £55 million of spare change in my back pocket.
And for someone that's injury prone, I'm not so sure.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe more outgoings than incomings. I mean, they've got Lucas Moura and Stephen Bergwijn as well, who again they threatened so much when they first joined, who seem to have dipped off a little bit. What I'd like, have you seen the Amazon documentary on Spurs?
All or Nothing, yes, fantastic.
Yeah. I'm only a few episodes in, but I really like Tanganga. He comes across really well in that.
The only annoying thing about that show is that for Man City, they showed pretty much everything from the start. You know, like the interviews with the new players when they first signed. But when you see the Tottenham one, you could tell like either Daniel Levy or Mourinho has been in that editing room, in my opinion. They didn't show anything about Poch at all, and then they just start with Mourinho.
Yeah, there's going to be reasons behind that, isn't there?
Yeah, but you would think Lowe would have Pochettino a bit in it, but
a bit. I mean, he'll no doubt be starring in his own All or Nothing soon with PSG.
That would be actually a good one to watch. You know how he would manage the youngsters as in Mbappe, youngsters at PSG. Moyes a team that philosophy I think suits him very well as a former player at PSG.
Well, I hope he does well. It's that Southampton, Tottenham we were talking about with Graham Potter, weren't we?
Yeah. So
Graham Potter going to be the next Pochettino? Well, don't know.
Well, Graham Potter to PSG in 2025. We'll see.
Yeah, maybe.
We'll never know. But next up is West Brom. Dare I say it? It's the position I've named the most. Centre half, maybe.
They need people to stop goals and they need people to score goals.
Yes. They have got a very good goalkeeper, though, in my opinion. Sam Johnston. I think he's kind of underrated.
Yeah. I will agree with you on that.
Like,
I mean, he's going to get plenty of action, isn't
he? Yeah, he is a former Man United trainee as well. So it's similar to like Ben Foster was a Man United player.
Yeah, I thought he played some games for Man United. It would have been Carabao Cup potentially type League Cup games, but I thought he did play some games for United.
Yeah, and he's only 27 apparently, so he's got a long future. But in goalkeeper terms, he's got a long future left with him.
Yeah, I mean, being a Wolves fan, I don't really spend too much time concentrating on West Brom. I'm actually glad they're in the Premier League, which I'm not sure how many Wolves fans would be like, because it's a good advert for West Midlands Black Country football, having derbies in there. Wolves, West Brom, always a great game to get to, always a really good atmosphere. So I'm actually glad they're in the Premier League. I hope they survive just by the skin of their teeth.
So do you think they will, or is that just your hopes?
No, I think they're going to get relegated. They'll most probably finish bottom of the league. Well, actually, with Sheffield United playing as badly as they are, maybe second from bottom, I think Sheffield United and West Brom are odds on. You know, if I was a bookie, I'd stop. Maybe not yet, but pretty soon I'd stop taking bets on those guys getting relegated.
So would the third team be Fulham in that one?
Yes, most probably.
Ooh.
It's boring though, isn't it? I mean, you want title races and you want relegation races to go on for as long as possible and go down to the last game of the season, don't you, in the last minute. You want a Man City QPR type game, don't you, to win the league, and you want West Brom staying up, however long ago that was, last game of the season. They're the kind of things that you want drama out of the season, but I don't know. I can't really see it happening too much this year.
Two more clubs, and they are, in my opinion, mid-table teams. West Ham United. They've just got rid of Sebastian Haller in a shock deal for half the price they bought him for. I feel like
doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Well, they bought him for 40 million and sold him for 20. Like, I feel.
Yeah. I don't know. I wouldn't always listen to those sort of headline figures and bits, because that 40 million is most probably the cost of his contract, plus the cost of a transfer fee, plus the cost of instalments after playing so many games, winning a cup, winning the Champions League, or whatever's put into a deal.
Yeah.
If that is the case, then that's some terrible business, isn't it?
Well, it's isn't it?
I'm
sorry if you're listening, but I wouldn't have done. But do you think they need?
He did score goals as well, and that's something that I think they could do with, as with a lot of mid-table teams. Antonio has been, from Forest buying that a couple of seasons ago, buying him. I don't think anyone expected him to be a focal centre forward and score goals and becoming a West Ham fan favourite. From right back to right midfield or the other way around, and now into centre forward. But he scores goals. He needs support and help up there. I'm not sure how Jarrod Bowen has been getting on.
Yeah, he's not a tiny little player. He reminds me a bit of I might be completely wrong. Jarrod Bowen reminds me a bit of Joe Cole, like a young Joe Cole, possibly. Who knows? Chelsea might pick him up. Who knows? Could be replicating his career.
Yeah, again, Thomas Soucek.
He was
seems to be playing well at the moment. West Ham are always one of these teams that they promise at the beginning of the season, and then their fans always seem to be a little bit annoyed, if not totally pissed off by the end of the season, because they're not performing. A bit like Newcastle, not performing to the expectations that the fans have. But to me, West Ham are a lower mid-table club.
Yeah. I don't think he was aiming at you, Spencer, if you're listening, when he said they are moaning a lot.
Obviously, I follow Spencer and Seb. There's actually loads of West Ham fans. Spencer, Seb, Jack Mate as well. He talked about West Ham a lot. There seems to be far too many social media, YouTube West Ham fans, I think.
Any good Arsenal ones? I don't even know any Arsenal fans from hashtag. I think the only one I could think of was Faisal. But
yeah, Faisal was. John Dawson was. I don't know if they still are. I don't know. Any other Arsenal
the originals are the better ones, anyway.
Yeah, you know that.
But yeah. So yeah, finally the final club. Save the best till last, I guess, in your opinion. Wolverhampton Wanderers. I feel like you need a striker after Jimenez's unfortunate injury. Hopefully he gets well soon.
Yeah, he was injured, and then there was obviously a lot in the press, a lot reported on about his injury. Now it seems to have gone a little bit quiet, so I don't know how bad his injury actually is.
Well, apparently it was a fractured skull, and apparently he's returning in February for light training. I know, quick recovery, I feel.
From a fractured skull. It's not the kind of thing you want to be messing around with. Is he going to be playing in a skull cap type like Petr Cech? Is that going to be needed if he is going to play on?
It'd be interesting to see what it look like up on this on an outside player. I've never seen an outfield player wear a scrum cap, but
how confident would you be heading the ball after fracturing your skull?
After that, I don't know. It's hard to tell, really. It's like, what's his name? Who was that up-and-coming midfielder from Tottenham who unfortunately had to retire because of it? Oh, what's his name?
Centre midfielder?
Yeah. Played for Hull. What was his name?
Oh,
Ryan Mason.
Yeah.
Like
That
he
one,
unfortunately retired from it at the age of 25. Like,
was that a fractured skull, broken
yeah,
head?
yeah. He apparently took a year to fully recover, and then he decided not to.
Yeah, I mean Jimmy Conrad, although different, it's not a fractured skull, but he retired because of a couple of concussions that he had that were really bad. But he still plays the odd game. He also played at the Wembley Cup and whatnot, but refuses to head a ball.
Oh.
Now, I don't know how many opponents actually know this, but we played away at Seaford, which is Theo's team. Charlie and Joe Weller, the team that they played for. New Haven it was, sorry. And yeah, Jimmy played my centre half, and I didn't know this until he took. So he literally plays it really well, but he gets really close to the centre half, let the ball literally last minute, then drops off a couple of yards, chests it down, and then plays, and just refuses to head any sort of long ball that comes through. So I don't think Jimenez will be doing that in the future.
But do you think that you need a striker?
Yeah, there's lots of talk of that around the Wolves camp. Who it is they're going to be target? They're saying that they're not going to buy anyone in January, but might look to take someone on loan. There was talk about Origi, which piped up a few weeks ago and then quietened down again. They definitely need someone up there. I mean, Fabio Silva has been bought, but he's really young. Don't know too much about Catroni and how he plays. And apart from that, really, I mean, Pedro Neto and Daniel Podence have been really good this year. Traore, not so much, but they're not central strikers. They're providers. They'll chip in with goals, but they'll very much operate in those wider areas, I would have thought. So, yeah, someone to take out the mantelpiece of Raul Jimenez would really help, I think. The other potential position, which hasn't been spoken about so much, is centre midfield.
Really?
I mean, at the moment, we've got Ruben Neves, Moutinho, and Dendoncker. There's a few younger players sitting behind him. Morgan Gibbs-White shows a lot of potential, England international, and has just been recalled loan from Stoke. And there's a couple of others as well, but I'm not sure about the longevity, especially with Moutinho. So it's definitely someone that they'd look to, I think, have somebody lined up to succeed his place in the next season or two, I suppose. I mean, what's been surprising for me is that a lot of the players that they bring in at Wolves, they've obviously got connections in Portugal and through various different agents, but they seem to be able to sell the likes of Matt Doherty to Spurs, and then not necessarily. Like I would have thought that would be a massive hole to fill, and then they've brought in Semedo Nelson. Semedo. I can't pronounce players' surnames. I don't know if you've noticed this.
No, that's good so far.
But yeah, they bring in, I think, players who are able to fill the gap, but then also have a resale value about them as well. I mean, thinking about Jota going to Liverpool. So it looks like they're going to be a good, I don't want to say a selling team, but they're going to be a kind of a club to put players on the map for bigger teams. Now, hopefully that's only a kind of a shorter term interim strategy from people high up in Wolves, because there's going to be a time and a place where we're going to be investing money, buying players who obviously got a decent amount of money in and around the club now to be able to invest in a good playing squad to then start pushing on for Europe and start to look to be a regular European football at Molineux. So I'm hoping for that. I mean, it's a long way off when I used to go watch Wolves. It's kind of trying to get into the Premier League through the playoffs and being that team, always finishing 6th, 7th, 8th in the Championship or League Division 1 as it was then. So yeah, I'm really excited for the future at Wolves. Really good season last season. Hopefully this season finish top 10. I think we'll be happy. Next season kick on.
Do you think Diego Costa has been rumoured?
don't think he fits in at Wolves, to be honest.
Why is he not? Because he's not Portuguese, or?
yeah. I don't know if he speaks the lingo.
Well, he is Spanish, isn't he? Yeah, he's Spanish.
Yeah, he's a Brazilian Spanish player, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, can't see it happening, to be honest.
Well, that's all the clubs that we have. So I think that's where we're going to end the recording, I think, now. Thanks for listening, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks, Andy, for coming on.
Nice one, enjoyed that. Having a chat through the Premier League. I need to spend more time watching Match of the Day and any other football going on. So if anyone's been listening and completely disagrees with my opinion on their team, that's fine. Completely understand that. But let me know.
I will.
Yeah. Tweet Tony, Instagram Tony, and tag me in it. We can have a little chat about it.
But do not send him hate.
Say that again?
Don't send him hate.
Oh, I don't mind. I've got a thick enough skin. But I'd really like to hear, actually, how close do you think I was, or the conversation that Tony and I have had on your club? Are we miles off because we don't know it? Or are we actually pretty close? Let us know.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, guys.